first thing I want to do is to pay tribute to the very many campaigners across the country, some of whom are in the gallery. When faced with a situation that you discover that the house that you've bought whatever number of years ago is basically crumbling around you, you could be forgiven for, collapsing into despair and thinking, Jesus, like there's nothing I can do here. But we're at the point where we're at, and it's still not where we need to be, but we're at the point where we're at because the campaigners didn't just take that approach. They're backwards to the walls, and they just campaigned extremely valiantly, extremely eloquently, like, for example, at the committee yesterday, and in massive numbers and persistently. I had the privilege of speaking to the massive protest, thousands and thousands of people in Dublin outside the Customs House. I think it was in October last year, and the determination and resilience of the people there was absolutely clear, and I just really want to say fair play to you all, because you've also helped, I'll mention later, but you've raised the sights of other people across the country affected by other construction defects, that if you campaign, actually you can force change on the government. So you've had an enormously positive impact in this country. The message from the campaigners, and it's part of the reason why the campaign has been so effective, has always been extremely clear. 100% redress, nothing less. And with a very profoundly strong moral argument behind that, which everybody across the country could understand, that this is not our fault. This is not the fault of homeowners. We have no hand, act or part to blame in terms of this situation. The responsibility lies with the quarry owners, with the builders, the developers, and with successive governments that have built a republic of developers and quarry owners and so on, as opposed to one that serves the interests of ordinary working people. And the problem, to summarise, and then we'll go into some more details, but the problem that we have at the moment is that the bill as presented is quite far, really quite far from 100% redress, nothing less. In reality, we have a nice big asterisk beside the redress, it's a road to 100% redress, and then a whole bunch of small print, which has the effect of significantly reducing the amount of redress to significantly less than 100%, meaning that homeowners would continue to be in a crisis situation. And I just want to read again a crucial part of the statement issued by the different campaigns from across the different counties coming together, addressing the Minister. Minister, let us be clear, so our words are not misunderstood. If this bill is not amended, we, the homeowners, will not support it. We will continue our campaign and protests until it is amended, until it is fit for purpose. It doesn't get any clearer than that. And the Minister knows these people are not joking, they're not making, empty promises. They're capable of running extremely effective campaigns. So at this point, we're obviously coming down to the very kind of business end of things here. We go through second stage. The deadline for amendments has already passed. The time for the government and the Minister to make the right decision is quickly, or the window for making the right decision is quickly closing. And I would just strongly urge you, primarily for the benefit of the homeowners, but also I would urge you that it's in your own interest to do the right thing here. Firstly, expand the amount of time that is being, or make sure that the amount of time in terms of committee is expanded to give appropriate consideration, and agree to the amendments that would actually turn this into 100% redress, nothing less scheme, which is what is absolutely required. I mean, you can go back to 2017 when the Dáil committee was discussing, I think it would have been the pyrite scheme at the time, and the Dáil committee recommended, quote, the mission statement of the redress scheme should be ordinary owners who purchase in good faith should not be liable for the cost of remediation caused by the incompetence, negligence or deliberate non-compliance of others. Do you know what I mean? It's simple. There's nothing complicated about it, and it's very simple in terms of what should happen. Okay, to go into things in a little bit more detail. Firstly, just a point for anyone who's watching. When we're calling for, on this side of the House, for more time for debate and so on at the committee, something for people to be aware of is that what happens in the Dáil, it isn't just that there won't be enough time and therefore there won't be enough exhaustion of the issues and chance for everyone to contribute, but that you only get as far as you get in terms of the amendments. And then if you haven't reached your amendments, they just fall. They're just gone if they're not government amendments. If they're government amendments, they automatically pass, but I understand we don't have government amendments. If they're opposition amendments, they automatically disappear in a very undemocratic way. They're just defeated. So we don't even get to have a vote on them, never mind having the kind of exhaustive, comprehensive discussion that is clearly necessary as a result of, one, the situation that the homeowners are facing, and two, the amount of money that the state is rightly talking about spending. So that's one point. Second point, in terms of going into the details, I mean, we agree with the amendments that have been put forward by Deputy Pringle and others. I think there's 80 in total, because as the homeowners put forward, there's 80 different mistakes and flaws in the bill. We agree with all of those. To highlight a few, one, the limitation in Section 5 of the bill to a small number of counties. I just don't see the logic of doing that. It doesn't make sense to do that, as we don't yet have a full assessment of where the defective blocks have been used. Secondly, Section 8 of the bill, limiting the scheme to homes built before 2020. Again, doesn't make sense, particularly in the context of the extremely concerning evidence heard by the committee last week that there may well be defective blocks still being produced as we speak. Obviously, we have to act to ensure that that is not continuing, but it means, therefore, putting some sort of time limit for when the homes would have been bought is completely inappropriate. Similarly, limiting the scheme to only owners who bought their home before 2020 is an unfair and arbitrary line. The issue which has been highlighted seems to be vital, the question in terms of Section 12, leaving out the cost of replacing foundations when they are affected. Again, it doesn't make any sense either from the point of view of the homeowners who are being affected by mica, nor from the point of view of the state. It won't make any sense for the state to literally spend billions of euros and then have, whatever proportion of that, those billions of euros going into building on defective foundations, which then won't last, have to come down, have to do it all over again. That would be, really a crime for us to go through that process. The point in terms of garages and walls being included, these in reality will constitute a significant reduction in the amount of money that homeowners are able to get. The point in terms of the cap on the total amount of money that a homeowner could get, we have this cap. We've already had massive amounts of inflation, and we're going to have more by the time the scheme actually comes into operation. Clearly, it's completely inadequate. I also think the point has been extremely well made by the campaigners in terms of no penalty for downsizing. The idea that we should be disincentivising people from downsizing their house doesn't make any sense from a justice point of view or from an environmental point of view. We shouldn't be putting pressure on people. If they want to rebuild the same house they have now, we should be facilitated 100% redress. But if they wanted to downsize for whatever reason, the state should fully support them in that, using less materials, having a smaller carbon footprint. That is a good thing that in no way that they should be penalised for. There's a number of other flaws as well which are being addressed with opposition amendments, arbitrary limits in terms of grant timings, flawed methods in terms of calculating the redress. Just to move on, in terms of, and again, this features in these debates, but the fundamental point, we're in this crisis situation we've been through pyrite, now we're dealing with mica, we're going to be dealing with, I'll come on to the point, but it's, very significant other construction defect problems in terms of apartments in particular. And it is all a microcosm of the failings of the Irish political system and its current government. It is a crumbling monument to all that is wrong and that has been wrong with the Irish construction sector and the political influence of the Irish construction sector. It is the predecessors of the minister and the predecessors of the government, but which also include both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael down through the years and down through the decades in reality, that presided over a system of self-certification, extremely low levels of regulation, and just allowed shoddy work, completely inadequate practices to happen all over the place with, in reality, at different levels, quarry owners, builders, etc., all operating simply with the aim of maximising their profit and cutting corners at the expense of ordinary householders in the first instance, and now necessarily the public as a whole in terms of having to pay for a redress scheme. So there's two conclusions I draw from that. One, what is necessary now, 100% redress, nothing less, paid for by the state. But then the state should mercilessly pursue those who are responsible. Mercilessly pursue those who have created this mess with a view to maximising the amount of return to the state. If we can prove that there has been conscious, the homeowners certainly believe there has been conscious awareness and knowledge of what was happening, say in terms of the quarry owners, well then they should be taken out of private ownership, no compensation, taken into public ownership, including assets and so on, and all those assets being used to right the wrong for which they are responsible. The second conclusion is that we would be in a much better place to deal with this situation if we had a state construction company. We need to create a state construction company both to address the housing crisis but also to be able to rapidly address the construction defects that have been discovered, will be discovered in the future. We would very rapidly be able to deal with it as opposed to being reliant on the private market and so on. The final point I want to make is at different phases of this campaign, the tactic of divide and rule has been used by the government or by outriders of the government to kind of say to people in Dublin, why would you be paying for the people in Donegal or Clare or wherever? There's been various articles in newspapers and so on suggesting that there's some injustice being done there. But what I want to say to all the people in the counties who are affected is that the people I represent in Dublin South West, and I believe the vast majority of people in Dublin and across the country, don't share any of those attitudes. What there is from ordinary people in Dublin and everywhere else is a sentiment of solidarity, of fair play, and an outrage at the injustice that has been perpetrated on the people who have experienced this in terms of mica. And a sense of course, why should these people be punished for things that is nothing, no fault of their own, the responsibility of quarry owners and construction companies and so on. So that divide and rule tactic didn't work at all. There was huge upswell of support, of solidarity, obviously the extremely effective campaigning, the stickers, the posters across the whole country, raising awareness about this issue played a very important role in that, and that was completely ineffective. That makes me return to the point I referenced at the start, which is that it has given people confidence elsewhere. So I'll give you an example, and I raised this last week with the Minister. In my constituency, I'm now in touch with a significant group of apartment and duplex owners. These are people in a major apartment complex where significant defects have been discovered. Last week when I spoke here, I said to the Minister they were being told that they needed to pay €15,000 in terms of dealing with fire defects. Since then, they have a quantity surveyor's report which says it could be up to €45,000 for each apartment. And these people aren't able to pay that. They don't have that kind of money. There's no way that's going to work. It just simply doesn't work for them. And yet they were being presented with the threat that the fire officers were going to shut down access to the building. But because of the MICA campaigners, they have a sense that this isn't on, this isn't right. Just like people affected by MICA, this isn't any responsibility of ourselves. We couldn't possibly have known this when we bought our apartments, and we shouldn't be left with the bill. And so they and others, for example, I'm aware now of another apartment block in Carrick Mines, are coming together to say we need redress. And obviously I support the call that's been mentioned for tax credits in terms of these schemes, but I would make the point, tax credits implies that people can pay up front. Most people don't have 15 grand in the bank, never mind 45 grand in the bank. That doesn't work. And we are now seeing a situation whereby you're talking about tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 apartments in particular, built in the Celtic Tiger era, victims of self-certification, poor regulation, shoddy building practices, exactly like the homeowners in terms of MICA have experienced. And the idea that these people are going to be able to pay up front to deal with it, that's not going to work. Simply put, we're going to need a redress scheme like we've had for pyrite, like we absolutely have to have for MICA. We're going to have it for apartment owners, duplex owners affected by the shoddy construction that happened during the Celtic Tiger, in particular the fire defects. And I understand the working group, it was due to report by the end of June. Obviously today is the end of June, so I suspect it's another couple of weeks. Yeah. So it's presumably another couple of weeks away that the working group completes its report. But I would say, obviously a tax credit, if it's included in the budget, it's much better than nothing, but it's not going to be enough. You know, this is a huge problem, which we're seeing now, partly as a consequence of MICA and people becoming aware of it, but then also fire inspections and so on being done. And same basic principle applies. Not the fault of the homeowners, no fault whatsoever of them. The victims of the construction industry and governments and the state which poorly regulated the construction industry, and therefore the state needs to step in. We need to have redress schemes, and then we absolutely need to pursue those who are responsible for the situation that we're currently in. So I'm kind of putting the Minister on notice there that unfortunately this won't be the last redress scheme that is needed, and to strongly encourage the Minister to take on board the points that are being made, to take on board the position of the MICA campaigners, and to, one, agree to the extension of the debate in committee to make sure we get to hear all the amendments, but two, and most importantly, accept the amendments, agree to a genuine 100% redress, nothing less scheme, because it is what is necessary for the homeowners. Thank you.